We're joined by guest Chuck Robbins, CEO of Cisco. Chuck, great to see you.
It's good to see you, Andy. Alexis, always good.
So let me ask you about the trade deal with China and where you stand competitively and how that impacts your business right now, Chuck.
Well, look, we are quite pleased that we have the first phase of a trade deal done. In addition to USMCA, in addition to hopefully progress on Brexit, I mean, these uncertainties that existed out there were, in my opinion, the biggest drags that we faced. And while the initial China trade deal doesn't have significant impact on us directly, it's very good for American companies, it's very good for the American finance industry and others. So we're very optimistic on it. I think it'll make our customers feel better. And so we're very pleased that it got done.
You were at a breakfast, I believe, this morning with President Trump and some other American CEOs. Yeah, we want the scoop.
Come on.
Did he talk at all? Because in his speech here, he sort of flippantly said a phase 2 trade deal will get started very shortly. He didn't give any kind of a timeline. Did he talk at all about that? Did you ask him about that phase 2? Because I'd imagine it's that phase that you're really holding out for that could contain something that could more materially impact Cisco.
No, he didn't talk about the phase 2 other than the fact that we've got phase 1 done, that the tariffs remain until we get phase 2 done. So I think there's a lot of incentive, I think, from both sides to get there, but he didn't talk about it specifically today.
Let me ask you about talent and attracting and retaining employees, and particularly wages. And so do you feel that you guys have pressure to raise wages right now, Chuck? And what's it like out there trying to get people to come work for Cisco?
Well, it's competitive everywhere, but it's very competitive in the Valley. And so we try to not only pay competitively, but we have an incredible focus on the culture of the organization. And I talk to lots of college students and young in career, and I tell them, look, if you're smart and talented, you're going to have a whole lot of places where you can make a great living and you can be very challenged. The real differentiator for them is going to be where's the place that you love and where's the place that has shared values with what you believe. And so we're trying to focus on both, which I think, we were fortunate in October to have been named the #1 global workplace by Great Places to Work. So, we're focused on just creating an environment in addition to paying competitively.
Good for you. That's a nice title to have, right?
It is.
The last couple of quarters have been challenging for Cisco. Results were a little weaker than expected. Guidance wasn't as strong as perhaps some had wanted to see. Was a lot of that because of China, a pullback in CapEx spending? And then what does the future look like?
Yeah, I think we've had some pressure in China, obviously, on our business there in the midst of all the uncertainty, which we've talked about, and we expected that. Our service provider business has been going through some weakness due to the transition to 5G, the focus on building out the radio network, and we actually play in the core once the radio network gets built out. And then over the last couple of quarters, what we talked about is the uncertainty with some of these dynamics around trade, around Brexit, et cetera. We think it felt like there was a little bit of a tapping of the brakes. It wasn't like massive, but we felt our customers tap the brakes. The activity with the customers, the commitment to the technology, the belief in the strategic value is still there, the pipeline's still there, everything else, they just slowed down just a bit, as we had talked about on our last earnings call.
Hey, Chuck, let me ask you about Huawei. I mean, you guys compete against them. Has all this trouble and headwinds that they've faced here in the United States benefited you?
I don't think so. I think that what it potentially has done around the world is caused lots of countries and customers to pause, trying to figure out exactly where's the stance in my country. What should I be doing? What should I be thinking about? But I wouldn't say we've seen anything material as a result of it at all.
In many ways, I think Cisco is a barometer of tech spending globally. People look to your company. What do you see sort of long lens, talking macro now, on a global scale?
Oh, I think it's going to be healthy for a very long time. I mean, if you look at how customers think about the technology today, even versus 7 or 8 years ago, today, if you go back 7 or 8 years, we used to say that, a company would build their strategy and then they would look to their IT teams and say, do whatever you do with that technology to enable it. And now they're having the discussions in the boardroom about how does my strategy actually evolve based on what technology does for me, and how the technology is driving the strategy in many cases. So it's become core to the business strategy of the organizations as opposed to just an enabler, which I think will means that it's going to continue for a very long time.
And just quick last question, Chuck. You mentioned 5G. Is 5G really going to be a game changer for all of us and for Cisco?
It will. I think it's going to be in phases, both from a consumer brand then into the enterprise. It's going to be a multi-year transition. And it will, much like 4G was, we look back and think of 4G.
It seems like a long time ago.
Was not a flip of the switch.
And what happened is we didn't know what it was going to enable.
Right.
And now we're all carrying around smartphones with hundreds of apps on them that didn't exist before 4G because that became possible. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see what gets developed and what innovation gets inspired by these new speeds that we have out there.
All right, Chuck Robbins, CEO of Cisco. Thanks so much for coming here.
Yeah, good.
No questions about UNC basketball, which is having a challenging season. We'll let it go with that.
I appreciate it.
That's the next interview. All right, thanks, Chuck.